Track 9.
Small World's big ballad, World to Me, is a dreamy pearl of a song. And though it's about sticking together in a relationship, it also makes allusions to China and Alaska and Tennessee, carrying on the album's Small World theme. And the band sounds really good on it. Better Be True is also a bit of a ballad, but it's not a dreamy pearl, and its lyrics aren't really about sticking together in a relationship, nor does it make allusions to China or Alaska, and the band sounds really good on it. Give Me the Keys and I'll Drive You Crazy is a good times blues rocker about, what else? Driving around, incorporating the album's theme in a much more playful way than previous songs on the album did, and though lyrically it might seem impoverished, it's still a sign that the new Serious Lewis, that Huey the artist, hasn't totally lost his frisky sense of humor. The album ends with Slammin', which has no words, and it's just a lot of horns that, quite frankly, if you turn it up really loud, can give you a fucking big headache and maybe even make you feel a little sick, though it might sound different on an album or on a cassette, though I wouldn't know anything about that. Anyway, it sets off something wicked in me that lasted for days, and you cannot dance to it very well. It took something like 100 people to put Small World together, counting all the extra musicians, drum technicians, accountants, lawyers, who are all thanked. But this actually adds to the CD's theme of community, and it doesn't clutter the record. It makes it a more joyous experience. With this CD, and the 4 previous ones behind it, Huey Lewis and the News prove that if this really is a small world, then these guys are the best American band of the 1980s on this or any other continent, and it has with it Huey Lewis, a vocalist, musician, and writer who just can't be topped. In bed with Courtney. I'm in Courtney's bed. Lewis is in Atlanta. Courtney shivers, presses against me, relaxes. I roll off her onto my back, landing on something hard and covered with fur. I reach under myself to find a stuffed black cat with blue jewels for eyes that I think I spotted at FAO Schwartz when I was doing some early Christmas shopping. I'm at a loss as to what to say, so I stammer, "Tiffany lamps are making a comeback." I can barely see her face in the darkness, but hear the sigh, painful and low, the sound of a prescription bottle snapping open, her body shifting in the bed. I drop the cat on the floor, get up, take a shower. On the Patty Winter show this morning, the topic was beautiful teenage lesbians, which I found so erotic I had to stay home, miss a meeting, jerk off twice. Aimless, I spend an inordinate amount of the day at Sotheby's, bored and confused. Last night, dinner with Jeanette at deck chairs. She seemed tired and ordered little. We split a pizza that cost $90. After toweling my hair dry, I put on a Ralph Lauren robe and walk back into the bedroom, start to dress. Courtney is smoking a cigarette, watching Late Night with David Letterman, the sound turned down low. "Will you call me before Thanksgiving?" she asks. Maybe. I button up the front of my shirt, wondering why I even came here in the first place. "What are you doing?" she asks, speaking slowly. My response is predictably cool. "Dinner at the River Cafe. Afterwards, O-Bar, maybe." "That's nice," she murmurs. "You and Lewis?" I ask. "We were supposed to have dinner at Tad and Maura's," she sighs. "But I don't think we're going to anymore." "Why not?" I slip on my vest, black cashmere from Polo, thinking, I am really interested. "Oh, you know how Lewis is with the Japanese," she starts, her eyes already glazed over. When she fails to continue, I ask, annoyed, "You're making sense. Go on." "Lewis refused to play Trivial Pursuit at Tad and Maura's last Sunday because they have an Akita." She takes a drag off her cigarette. "So, like..." I pause. "What happened?" "We played at my place." "I never knew you smoked," I say. She smiles sadly, but in a dumb way. You never noticed. Okay, I admit I'm embarrassed, but just a little. I move over to the Marleyan mirror that hangs above a Sotsas teakwood desk to make sure the knot in my Armani paisley tie isn't crooked. Listen, Patrick, she says with effort. Can we talk? You look marvelous, I sigh, turning my head, offering an air kiss. There's nothing to say. You're going to marry Louis. Next week, no less. Isn't that special? She asks sarcastically, but not in a frustrated way. Read my lips, I say, turning back to the mirror. You look marvelous. Patrick? Yes, Courtney. If I don't see you before Thanksgiving... She stops, confused. Have a nice one? I look at her for a moment before replying tonelessly. You too. She picks up the stuffed black cat, strokes its head. I step out of the door into the hallway, heading down it toward the kitchen. Patrick, she calls softly from her bedroom. I stop, but don't turn around. Yes? Nothing. Smith and Walensky. I'm with Craig McDermott in Harry's on Hanover. He's smoking a cigar, drinking a Stoli Cristal martini, asking me what the rules are for wearing a pocket square. I'm drinking the same thing, answering him. We're waiting for Harold Carnes, who just got back from London on Tuesday, and he's half an hour late. I'm nervous, impatient, and when I tell McDermott that we should have invited Todd, or at least Hamlin, who was sure to have cocaine, he shrugs and says that maybe we'll be able to find Carnes at Delmonico's. But we don't find Carnes at Delmonico's, so we head uptown to Smith Walensky for an 8 o'clock reservation that one of us made. McDermott is wearing a 6-button double-breasted wool suit by Cerruti 1881, a Tattersall cotton shirt by Lewis Boston, a silk tie by Dunhill. I'm wearing a 6-button double-breasted wool suit by Ermenegildo Zegna, a striped cotton shirt by Luciano Barbera, a silk tie by Armani, suede wingtips by Ralph Lauren, socks by E.G. Smith. Men who've been raped by women was the topic on the Patty Winter Show this morning. Sitting in a booth at Smith & Walensky, which is strangely empty, I'm on Valium, drinking a good glass of red wine, wondering absently about that cousin of mine in St. Albans, in Washington, who recently raped a girl, biting her earlobes off, getting a sick thrill not ordering the hash browns, how my brother and I once rode horses together, played tennis. This is burning from my memory, but McDermott eclipses these thoughts when he notices I haven't ordered the hash browns after dinner has arrived. What is this? You can't eat at Smith & Walensky without ordering the hash browns, he complains. I avoid his eyes and touch the cigar I'm saving in my jacket pocket. Jesus, Bateman, you're a raving maniac. Been at P&P too long, he mutters. No fucking hash browns. I don't say anything. How can I tell McDermott that this is a very disjointed time of my life, and that I notice the walls have been painted a bright, almost painful white, and under the glare of the fluorescent lights I seem to pulse and glow. Frank Sinatra is somewhere, singing Witchcraft. I'm staring at the walls, listening to the words, suddenly thirsty. But our waiter is taking orders from a very large table of exclusively Japanese businessmen, and someone who I think is either George McGowan or Taylor Preston is in the booth behind this one, wearing something by Polo, and eyeing me suspiciously. And McDermott is still staring at my steak with this stunned look on his face, and one of the Japanese businessmen is holding an abacus. Another one is trying to pronounce the word teriyaki. Another is mouthing, then singing the words to the song. And the table laughs, an odd, not completely foreign sound, as he lifts up a pair of chopsticks, shaking his head confidently, imitating Sinatra. His mouth opens. What comes out of it is this. That's right, come histel stale, that crazy witchcraft. something on television. While getting dressed to meet Jeanette for a new British musical that opened on Broadway last week, and then dinner at Progress, the new Malcolm Forbes restaurant on the Upper East Side, I watch a tape of this morning's Patty Winter show, which is split into 2 parts. The first section is a feature on the lead singer of the rock band Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose, whom Patty quoted as telling an interviewer, "When I get stressed, I get violent and take it out on myself. I've pulled razor blades on myself, but then realized that having a scar is more detrimental than not having a stereo. I'd rather kick my stereo in than go punch somebody in the face. When I get mad or upset or emotional, sometimes I'll walk over and play my piano." Part 2 consists of Patty reading letters that Ted Bundy, the mass murderer, had written to his fiancée during one of his many trials. "Dear Carol," she reads, while an unfairly bloated headshot of Bundy just weeks away from execution flashes across the screen, "please do not sit in the same row in court with Janet. When I look over toward you, there she sits contemplating me with her mad eyes, like a deranged seagull studying a clam. I can feel her spreading hot sauce on me already." I wait for something to happen. I sit in my bedroom for close to an hour. Nothing does. I get up, do the rest of the coke, a minuscule amount, that's in my closet left over from a late Saturday at MK or O-Bar. Stop at Orso for a drink before meeting Jeanette, who I called earlier, mentioning that I had 2 tickets to this particular musical, and she didn't say anything except, "I'll go." And I told her to meet me in front of the theater at 10 to 8, and she hung up. I tell myself while I'm sitting alone at the bar in Orso that I was going to call one of the numbers that flashed on the bottom of the screen, but then I realize that I didn't know what to say, and I remembered 10 of the words Patty read. I can feel her spreading hot sauce on me already. I remember these words again for some reason, while Jeanette and I are sitting in Progress after the musical, and it's late. The restaurant is crowded. We order something called Eagle Carpaccio, mesquite grilled mahi-mahi, endive with chèvre, and chocolate-covered almonds, this weird kind of gazpacho with raw chicken in it, dry beer. Right now, there really is nothing edible on my plate. What there is tastes like plaster. Jeanette is wearing a wool smoking jacket, a silk chiffon shawl with one sleeve, wool tuxedo pants, all Armani, antique gold and diamond earrings, stockings from Givenchy, gross-grain flats. She keeps sighing and threatens to light a cigarette, even though we're seated in the non-smoking section of the restaurant. Jeanette's behavior deeply unsettles me, causes black thoughts to form and expand in my head. She's been drinking champagne Kiers, but has already had too many, and when she orders her 6th, I suggest that maybe she's had enough. She looks at me and says, "I am cold and thirsty, and I will order what I fucking want." I say, "Then have an Evian or San Pellegrino, for Christ's sakes." Sandstone. My mother and I are sitting in her private room at Sandstone, where she is now a permanent resident. Heavily sedated, she has her sunglasses on and keeps touching her hair. I keep looking at my hands, pretty sure that they're shaking. She tries to smile when she asks what I want for Christmas. I'm not surprised at how much effort it takes to raise my head and look at her. I'm wearing a 2-button wool gabardine suit with notched lapels by Gianmarco Venturi, cap-toed leather lace-ups by Armani, tie by Polo. Socks, I'm not sure where from. It's nearing the middle of April. "Nothing," I say, smiling reassuringly. There's a pause. I break it by asking, "What do you want?" She says nothing for a long time, and I look back at my hands, at dried blood, probably from a girl named Suki, beneath the thumbnail. My mother licks her lips tiredly and says, "I don't know. I just want to have a nice Christmas." I don't say anything. I spent the last hour studying my hair in the mirror I've insisted the hospital keep in my mother's room. "You look unhappy," she says suddenly. "I'm not," I tell her with a brief sigh. You look unhappy, she says, more quietly this time. She touches her hair, stark blinding white, again. Well, you do too, I say slowly, hoping that she won't say anything else. She doesn't say anything else. I'm sitting in a chair by the window, and through the bars the lawn outside darkens. A cloud passes over the sun. Soon the lawn turns green again. She sits on her bed in a nightgown from Bergdorf's and slippers by Norma Kamali that I bought her for Christmas last year. How was the party? She asks. Okay, I say, guessing. How many people were there? 40. 500. I shrug. I'm not sure. She licks her lips again, touches her hair once more. What time did you leave? I don't remember. I answer after a long time. 1, 2, she asks. It must have been 1, I say, almost cutting her off. Oh. She pauses again, straightens her sunglasses, black Ray-Bans I bought her from Bloomingdale's, that cost $200. It wasn't very good, I say uselessly, looking at her. Why? She asks, curious. It just wasn't, I say, looking back at my hand, the specks of blood under the nail on my thumb. The photograph of my father, when he was a much younger man, on my mother's bedside table next to a photograph of Sean and me, when we were both teenagers, wearing tuxedos, neither one of us smiling. In the photograph of my father, he's wearing a 6-button double-breasted black sport coat, a white spread-collar cotton shirt, a tie, pocket square, shoes, all by Brooks Brothers. He's standing next to one of the topiary animals a long time ago at his father's estate in Connecticut, and there's something the matter with his eyes. The best city for business. And on a rainy Tuesday morning, after working out at Exclusive, I stopped by Paul Owen's apartment on the Upper East Side. 161 days have passed since I spent the night in it with the 2 escort girls. There has been no word of bodies discovered in any of the city's 4 newspapers, or on the local news. No hints of even a rumor floating around. I've gone so far as to ask people, dates, business acquaintances, over dinners, in the halls of Pierce & Pierce, if anyone has heard about 2 mutilated prostitutes found in Paul Owen's apartment. But like in some movie, no one has heard anything, has any idea of what I'm talking about. There are other things to worry over. The shocking amount of laxative and speed that the cocaine in Manhattan is now being cut with. Asia in the 1990s. The virtual impossibility of landing an 8 o'clock reservation at PR. The new Tony McManus restaurant on Liberty Island. Crack. So what I'm assuming is that, essentially, no bodies have been found. For all I know, Kimball has moved to London, too. The building looks different to me as I step out of the taxi, though I can't figure out why. I still have the keys I stole from Owen the night I killed him, and I take them out now to open the lobby door, but they don't work, won't fit properly. Instead, a uniformed doorman who wasn't here 6 months ago opens it for me, excusing himself for taking so long. I stand there in the rain, confused, until he ushers me in, merrily asking with a thick Irish accent, "Well, are you coming in or staying out? You're getting soaked." I move into the lobby, my umbrella held under one arm, tucking the surgical mask I brought with me to deal with the smell back into my pocket. I'm holding a Walkman, debating what to say, how to phrase it. "Well, now, what can I do for you, sir?" he asks. I stall. A long, awkward pause, before saying simply, 14A. He looks me over carefully before checking his book, then beams, marking something down. "Ah, of course. Mrs. Wolfe is up there right now." Mrs. Wolfe? Weakly, I smile. "Yes, she's the real estate agent," he says, looking up at me. You do have an appointment, don't you? The elevator operator, also a new addition, stares at the floor as the two of us rise up into the building. I'm trying to retrace my steps on that night, during that whole week, uselessly knowing I have never been back to this apartment after murdering the two girls. How much is Owen's apartment worth? Is a question that keeps forcing its way into my mind, until finally it just rests there, throbbing. The Patty Winter show this morning was about people with half their brains removed. My chest feels like ice. The elevator doors open. I step out, cautiously, watching behind me as they close. Then I'm moving down the hallway toward Owen's apartment. I can hear voices inside. I lean against the wall, sighing, keys in my hand, knowing already the locks have been changed. As I wonder what I should do, trembling, staring at my loafers, which are black and by 8 Tostoni, the door to the apartment opens, startling me out of a momentary flash of self-pity. A middle-aged real estate broker walks out, offers a smile, asks, checking her book, "Are you my 11 o'clock?" "No," I say. She says, "Excuse me," and making her way down the hall looks back at me once, with a strange expression on her face, before disappearing around the corner. I'm staring into the apartment. A couple in their late 20s stand, conferring with each other, in the middle of the room. She's wearing a wool jacket, a silk blouse, wool flannel slacks, Armani, vermeil earrings, gloves, holding a bottle of Evian water. He has on a tweed sport jacket, cashmere sweater vest, cotton chambray shirt, tie, Paul Stewart, Agnes B. cotton trench coat draped over arm. Behind them, the apartment looks spotless. New Venetian blinds. The cowhide paneling is gone. The furniture, the mural, the glass coffee table, Thonet chairs, black leather couch, all seem intact. The large-screen television set has been moved into the living room, and it's been turned on, the volume low. A commercial where a stain walks off a jacket and addresses the camera is on now. But it doesn't make me forget what I did to Christie's breasts. To one of the girls' heads, the nose missing, both ears bitten off. How you could see her teeth through where I had ripped the flesh from her jaws and both cheeks. The torrents of gore and the blood that washed over the apartment, the stench of the dead, my own confused warning that I had drawn in, "Can I help you?" The real estate agent, Mrs. Wolfe, I'm guessing, intrudes. She has a very angular, thin face. The nose is large, distressingly real-looking. Heavily lipstick mouth, white blue eyes. She's wearing a wool boucle jacket, washed silk blouse, shoes, earrings, a bracelet, from where, I don't know. Maybe she's younger than 40. I'm still leaning against the wall, staring at the couple who moved back into the bedroom, leaving the main room empty. I'm just noticing that bouquets and glass vases, dozens of them, fill the apartment everywhere, and I can smell them from where I'm standing in the hall. Mrs. Wolfe glances behind her to see what I'm staring at, then back to me. "I'm looking for... Doesn't Paul Owen live here?" A long pause before she answers, "No, he doesn't." Another long pause. "Are you, sure?" I ask, before feebly adding, "I don't understand." She realizes something that causes the muscles in her face to tighten. Her eyes narrow but don't close. She's noticed the surgical mask I'm gripping in a damp fist, and she breathes in sharply, refusing to look away. I am definitely not feeling right about any of this. On the TV, in a commercial, a man holds up a piece of toast and tells his wife, "Hey, you're right. This margarine really does taste better than shit." The wife smiles. "You saw the ad in the Times?" she asks. "No. Yes. Yes, I did, in the Times," I falter, gathering a pocket of strength, the smell from the roses thick, masking something revolting. "But doesn't Paul Owen still own this?" I ask as forcibly as possible. There's a long pause before she admits, "There was no ad in the Times." We stare at each other endlessly. I'm convinced she senses I'm about to say something. I've seen this look on someone's face before. Was it in a club? A victim's expression. Had it appeared on a movie screen recently, or had I seen it in the mirror? It takes what seems like an hour before I can speak again. But that's his... I stop, my heart skips, resumes beating. Furniture. I drop my umbrella, then lean down quickly to retrieve it. I think you should go, she says. I want to know what happened. I feel sick, my chest and back covered with sweat, drenched, it seems, instantaneously. Don't make any trouble, she says. All frontiers, if there had ever been any, seem suddenly detachable and have been removed. A feeling that others are creating my fate will not leave me for the rest of the day. This is not a game. I want to shout, but I can't catch my breath, though I don't think she can tell. I turn my face away. I need rest. I don't know what to say. Confused, I reach out for a moment to touch Mrs. Wolf's arm, to steady myself, but I stop it in midair, move it to my chest instead, but I can't feel it. Not even when I loosen my tie. It rests there, trembling, and I can't make it stop. I'm blushing, speechless. I suggest you go, she says. We stand there in the hallway, facing each other. Don't make any trouble, she says again, quietly. I stand there a few seconds longer before finally backing away, holding up my hands, a gesture of assurance. Don't come back, she says. I won't, I say. Don't worry. The couple appears in the doorway. Mrs. Wolf watches me until I'm at the elevator door, pressing the button for the attendant. In the elevator, the smell of the roses is overpowering. Working out. Free weights and Nautilus equipment relieve stress. My body responds to the workout accordingly. Shirtless, I scrutinize my image in the mirror above the sinks in the locker room at Exclusive. My arm muscles burn. My stomach is as taut as possible, my chest steel, pectorals granite hard, my eyes white as ice. In my locker, in the locker room at Exclusive, lie 3 vaginas I recently sliced out of various women I've attacked in the past week. 2 are washed off, 1 isn't. There's a barrette clipped to one of them. A blue ribbon from Hermès tied around my favorite. End of the 1980s. The smell of blood works its way into my dreams, which are for the most part terrible. On an ocean liner that catches fire, witnessing volcanic eruptions in Hawaii, the violent deaths of most of the inside traders at Solomon, James Robinson doing something bad to me, finding myself back at boarding school, then at Harvard, the dead walk among the living. The dreams are an endless reel of car wrecks and disaster footage, electric chairs and grisly suicides, syringes and mutilated pin-up girls, flying saucers, marble jacuzzis, pink peppercorns. When I wake up in a cold sweat, I have to turn on the widescreen television to block out the construction sounds that continue throughout the day, rising up from somewhere. A month ago was the anniversary of Elvis Presley's death. Football games flash by, the sound turned off. I can hear the answering machine click once, its volume lowered, then twice. All summer long, Madonna cries out to us, "Life is a mystery, everyone must stand alone." When I'm moving down Broadway to meet Jean, my secretary, for brunch, in front of Tower Records, a college student with a clipboard asks me to name the saddest song I know. I tell him without pausing, "You Can't Always Get What You Want" by the Beatles. Then he asks me to name the happiest song I know, and I say, "Brilliant Disguise" by Bruce Springsteen. He nods, makes a note, and I move on, past Lincoln Center. An accident has happened. An ambulance is parked by the curb. A pile of intestines lies on the sidewalk in a pool of blood. I buy a very hard apple at a Korean deli, which I eat on my way to meet Jean, who right now stands at the 67th Street entrance to Central Park on a cool, sunny day in September. When we look up at the clouds, she sees an island, a puppy dog, Alaska, a tulip. I see, but don't tell her, a Gucci money clip, an axe, a woman cut in two, a large puffy white puddle of blood that spreads across the sky, dripping over the city, onto Manhattan. We stop at an outdoor cafe, Nowheres, on the Upper West Side, debating which movie to see, if there are any museum exhibits we should attend, maybe just a walk. She suggests the zoo. I'm nodding mindlessly. Jean is looking good, like she's been working out, and she's wearing a gilt lame jacket and velvet shorts by Matsuda. I'm imagining myself on television, in a commercial for a new product, wine cooler, tanning lotion, sugarless gum. And I'm moving in jump cut, walking along a beach. The film is black and white, purposefully scratched. Eerie, vague pop music from the mid-1960s accompanies the footage. It echoes. Sounds as if it's coming from a calliope. Now I'm looking into the camera. Now I'm holding up the product. A new mousse? Tennis shoes? Now my hair is windblown. Then it's day. Then night. Then day again. And then it's night. I'll have an iced decaf au lait, Jean tells the waiter. I'll have a decapitated coffee also, I say absently, before catching myself. I mean, decaffeinated. I glance over at Jean, worried, but she just smiles emptily at me. A Sunday Times sits on the table between us. We discuss plans for dinner tonight, maybe. Someone who looks like Taylor Preston walks by, waves at me. I lower my Ray-Bans, wave back. Someone on a bike pedals past. I ask a busboy for water. A waiter arrives instead, and after that a dish containing 2 scoops of sorbet, cilantro lemon and vodka lime, are brought to the table that I didn't hear Jean order. Want a bite? She asks. I'm on a diet, I say, but thank you. You don't need to lose any weight, she says, genuinely surprised. You're kidding, right? You look great. Very fit. You can always be thinner, I mumble, staring at the traffic in the street, distracted by something. What? I don't know. Look better. Well, maybe we shouldn't go out to dinner, she says, concerned. I don't want to ruin your willpower. No, it's all right, I say. I'm not very good at controlling it anyway. Patrick, seriously, I'll do whatever you want, she says. If you don't want to go to dinner, we won't. I mean, it's okay, I stress. Something snaps. You shouldn't fawn over him. I pause before correcting myself. I mean, me, okay? I just want to know what you want to do, she says. To live happily ever after, right? I say, sarcastically. That's what I want. I stare at her hard for maybe half a minute before turning away. This quiets her. After a while, she orders a beer. It's hot out on the street. Come on, smile, she urges some time later. You have no reason to be sad. I know, I sigh, relenting. But it's tough to smile these days. At least, I find it hard to. I'm not used to it, I guess. I don't know. That's why people need each other, she says gently, trying to make eye contact, while spooning the not inexpensive sorbet into her mouth. Some don't. I clear my throat self-consciously. Or, well, people compensate. They adjust. After a long pause, people can get accustomed to anything, right? I ask. Habit does things to people. Another long pause. Confused, she says, I don't know. I guess. But one still has to maintain a ratio of more good things than bad in this world, she says, adding, I mean, right? She looks puzzled, as if she finds it strange that this sentence has come out of her mouth. A blast of music from a passing cab. Madonna again. Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone. Startled by the laughter at the table next to ours, I cock my head and hear someone admit, sometimes what you wear to the office makes all the difference. And then Jean says something, and I ask her to repeat it. Haven't you ever wanted to make someone happy? She asks. What? I ask, trying to pay attention to her. Jean? Shyly, she repeats herself. Haven't you ever wanted to make someone happy? I stare at her. A cold, distant wave of fright washes over me, dousing something. I clear my throat again and, trying to speak with great purposefulness, tell her, I was at Sugar Reef the other night, that Caribbean place on the Lower East Side. You know it. Who are you with? She interrupts. Jeanette. Evan McGlynn. Oh. She nods, silently relieved, believing me. Anyway, I sigh, continuing, I saw some guy in the men's room, a total Wall Street guy, wearing a one-button viscose wool and nylon suit by Luciano Soprani, a cotton shirt by Gitman Brothers, a silk tie by Ermengildo Zegna, and, I recognize the guy, a broker named Eldridge. I've seen him at Harry's and O-Bar and Duplex and Alex Goes to Camp, all the places. But when I went in after him, I saw he was writing something on the wall above the urinal he was standing at. I pause, take a swallow of her beer. When he saw me come in, he stopped writing, put away the Mont Blanc pen. He zipped up his pants, said, "Hello, Henderson," to me, checked his hair in the mirror, coughed, like he was nervous or something, and left the room. I pause again, another swallow. Anyway, I went over to use the urinal, and I leaned over to read what he wrote. Shuddering, I slowly wiped my forehead with a napkin. Which was? Jean asks cautiously. I close my eyes. 3 words fall from my mouth, these lips. Kill all yuppies. She doesn't say anything. To break the uncomfortable silence that follows, I mention all I can come up with, which is, did you know that Ted Bundy's first dog, a collie, was named Lassie? Pause. Had you heard this? Jean looks at her dish as if it's confusing her, then back up at me. Who's Ted Bundy? Forget it. I sigh. Listen, Patrick, we need to talk about something, she says. Or, at least, I need to talk about something. Where there was nature and earth, life and water, I saw a desert landscape that was unending, resembling some sort of crater, so devoid of reason and light and spirit that the mind could not grasp it on any sort of conscious level, and if you came close, the mind would reel backward, unable to take it in. It was a vision so clear and real and vital to me that in its purity it was almost abstract. This was what I could understand. This was how I lived my life. What I constructed my movement around, how I dealt with the tangible. This was the geography around which my reality revolved. It did not occur to me, ever, that people were good, or that a man was capable of change, or that the world could be a better place through one's taking pleasure in a feeling, or a look, or a gesture, of receiving another person's love or kindness. Nothing was affirmative, The term generosity of spirit applied to nothing, was a cliché, was some kind of bad joke. Sex is mathematics. Individuality no longer an issue. What does intelligence signify? Define reason. Desire, meaningless. Intellect is not a cure. Justice is dead. Fear, recrimination, innocence, sympathy, guilt, waste, failure, grief were things, emotions that no one really felt anymore. Reflection is useless. The world is senseless. Evil is its only permanence. God is not alive. Love cannot be trusted. Surface, surface, surface was all that anyone found meaning in. This was civilization as I saw it. Colossal and jagged. And I don't remember who it was you were talking to. It doesn't matter. What does is that you were very forceful, yet very sweet. And I guess I knew then that... She places her spoon down, but I'm not watching her. I'm looking out at the taxis moving up Broadway, yet they can't stop things from unraveling because Jean says the following. A lot of people seem to have... She stops, continues hesitantly. Lost touch with life, and I don't want to be among them. After the waiter clears her dish, she adds, I don't want to get bruised. I think I'm nodding. I've learned what it's like to be alone, and I think I'm in love with you. She says this last part quickly, forcing it out. Almost superstitiously, I turn toward her, sipping an Evian water, then, without thinking, say, smiling, I love someone else. As if this film had speeded up, she laughs immediately, looks quickly away, down, embarrassed. Well, sorry. Gosh. But, I add quietly, you shouldn't be afraid. She looks back up at me, swollen with hope. Something can be done about it, I say. Then, not knowing why I'd said that, I modify the statement, telling her straight on, maybe something can't, I don't know. I've thrown away a lot of time to be with you, so it's not like I don't care. She nods mutely. You should never mistake affection for passion, I warn her. It can be not good. It can get you into, well, trouble. She's not saying anything, and I can suddenly sense her sadness, flat and calm, like a daydream. What are you trying to say? She asks lamely, blushing. Nothing. I'm just letting you know that appearances can be deceiving. She stares at the Times stacked in heavy folds on the table. A breeze barely causes it to flutter. Why are you telling me this? Tactfully, almost touching her hand, but stopping myself, I tell her, I just want to avoid any future misconnections. A hardbody walks by, I notice her, then back at Jean. Oh, come on, don't look that way. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not, she says, trying to act casual. I just want to know if you're disappointed in me for admitting this. How could she ever understand that there isn't any way I could be disappointed, since I no longer find anything worth looking forward to? You don't know much about me, do you? I ask teasingly. I know enough, she says. Her initial response, but then she shakes her head. Oh, let's just drop this. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. In the next instant, she changes her mind. I want to know more, she says, gravely. I consider this before asking, Are you sure? Patrick, she says breathlessly, I know my life would be much emptier without you in it. I consider this, too, nodding thoughtfully, and I just can't... She stops, frustrated. I can't pretend these feelings don't exist, can I? Shh, There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there's no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there. It is hard for me to make sense on any given level. Myself is fabricated, an aberration. I am a non-contingent human being. My personality is sketchy and unformed. My heartlessness goes deep and is persistent. My conscience, my pity, my hopes disappeared a long time ago, probably at Harvard, if they ever did exist. There are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference toward it, I have now surpassed. I still, though, hold on to one single bleak truth. No one is safe. Nothing is redeemed. Yet I am blameless. Each model of human behavior must be assumed to have some validity. Is evil something you are, or is it something you do? My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. But even after admitting this, and I have countless times, in just about every act I've committed, and coming face to face with these truths, there is no catharsis. I gain no deeper knowledge about myself. No new understanding can be extracted from my telling. There has been no reason for me to tell you any of this. This confession has meant nothing. I'm asking Jean, how many people in this world are like me? She pauses, carefully answers, I don't think anyone. She's guessing. Let me rephrase the Wait, how does my hair look? I ask, interrupting myself. Fine. Okay, let me rephrase the question. I take a sip of her dry beer. Okay. Why do you like me? I ask. She asks back. Why? Yes, I say. Why? Well? A drop of beer has fallen onto my polo shirt. She hands me her napkin, a practical gesture that touches me. You're concerned with others? She says tentatively. That's a very rare thing in what... She stops again. Is I guess, a hedonistic world. This is... Patrick, you're embarrassing me. She shakes her head, closing her eyes. Go on, I urge. Please, I want to know. You're so sweet. She rolls her eyes up. Sweetness is sexy. I don't know. But so is mystery. Silence. And I think mystery. You're mysterious. Silence, followed by a sigh. And you're considerate? She realizes something, no longer scared, stares at me straight on, and I think shy men are romantic. How many people in this world are like me? I ask again. Do I really appear like that? Patrick, she says, I wouldn't lie. No, of course you wouldn't. But I think that... My turn to sigh contemplatively. I think... You know how they say no two snowflakes are ever alike? She nods. Well, I don't think that's true. I think a lot of snowflakes are alike. And I think a lot of people are alike, too. She nods again, though I can tell she's very confused. Appearances can be deceiving, I admit carefully. No, she says, shaking her head, sure of herself for the first time. I don't think they are deceiving. They're not. Sometimes, Jean, I explain, the lines separating appearance, what you see, and reality, what you don't, become, well, blurred. "That's not true," she insists. "That's simply not true." "Really?" I ask, smiling. "I didn't used to think so," she says. "Maybe 10 years ago I didn't, but I do now." "What do you mean?" I ask, interested. "You used to." A flood of reality. I get an odd feeling that this is a crucial moment in my life, and I'm startled by the suddenness of what I guess passes for an epiphany. There is nothing of value I can offer her. For the first time, I see Jean as uninhibited. She seems stronger, less controllable, wanting to take me into a new and unfamiliar land, the dreaded uncertainty of a totally different world. I sense she wants to rearrange my life in a significant way. Her eyes tell me this, and though I see truth in them, I also know that one day, sometime very soon, she too will be locked in the rhythm of my insanity. All I have to do is keep silent about this and not bring it up, yet she weakens me. It's almost as if she's making the decision about who I am. And in my own stubborn, willful way, I can admit to feeling a pang, something tightening inside, and before I can stop it, I find myself almost dazzled and moved that I might have the capacity to accept, though not return, her love. I wonder if even now, right here in Nowheres, she can see the darkening clouds behind my eyes lifting. And though the coldness I have always felt leaves me, the numbness doesn't and probably never will. This relationship will probably lead to nothing. This didn't change anything. I imagine her smelling clean, like tea. "Patrick, talk to me. Don't be so upset," she is saying. "I think it's time for me to take a good look at the world I've created." I choke, tearfully, finding myself admitting to her. "I came upon a half-gram of cocaine in my armoire last night." I'm squeezing my hands together, forming one large fist, all knuckles white. "What did you do with it?" she asks. I place one hand on the table. She takes it. "I threw it away. I threw it all away. I wanted to do it," I gasp. "But I threw it away." She squeezes my hand tightly. "Patrick?" she asks, moving her hand up until it's gripping my elbow. When I find the strength to look back at her, it strikes me how useless, boring, physically beautiful she really is, and the question, why not end up with her, floats into my line of vision. An answer. She has a better body than most other girls I know. Another one. Everyone is interchangeable anyway. One more. It doesn't really matter. She sits before me, sullen but hopeful, characterless, about to dissolve into tears. I squeeze her hand back, moved, no, touched by her ignorance of evil. She has one more test to pass. "Do you own a briefcase?" I ask her, swallowing. "No," she says. "I don't." "Evelyn carries a briefcase," I mention. "She does?" Jean asks. "And what about a Filofax?" "A small one," she admits. "Designer?" I ask, suspiciously. "No." I sigh, and take her hand, small and hard, in mine. And in the southern deserts of Sudan, the heat rises in airless waves. Thousands upon thousands of men, women, children roam throughout the vast bushland, desperately seeking food, ravaged and starving, leaving a trail of dead, emaciated bodies. They eat weeds and leaves and lily pads, stumbling from village to village, dying slowly, inexorably. A gray morning in the miserable desert, grit flies through the air. A child with a face like a black moon lies in the sand, scratching at his throat, cones of dust rising, flying across land like whirling tops. No one can see the sun. The child is covered with sand, almost dead, eyes unblinking, grateful. Stop and imagine for an instant a world where someone is grateful for something. None of the haggard pay attention as they file by, dazed and in pain. No, there is one who pays attention, who notices the boy's agony, and smiles, as if holding a secret. The boy opens and closes his cracked, chapped mouth soundlessly. There is a school bus in the distance somewhere, and somewhere else above that, in space, a spirit rises. A door opens. It asks, why? A home for the dead, an infinity. It hangs in a void. Time limps by, love and sadness rush through the boy. Okay. I am dimly aware of a phone ringing somewhere. In the cafe on Columbus, countless numbers, hundreds of people, maybe thousands, have walked by our table during my silence. Patrick, Jean says. Someone with a baby stroller stops at the corner and purchases a Dove bar. The baby stares at Jean and me. We stare back. It's really weird, and I'm experiencing a spontaneous kind of internal sensation. I feel I'm moving toward as well as away from something. And anything is possible. Aspen. It is 4 days before Christmas at 2 p.m. I'm sitting in the back of a pitch-black limousine parked in front of a nondescript brownstone off Fifth Avenue, trying to read an article about Donald Trump in the new issue of Fame magazine. Jeanette wants me to come in with her, but I say, forget it. She has a black eye from last night, since I had to coerce her over dinner at Ile Marlborough to even consider doing this. Then, after a more forceful discussion at my apartment, she consented. Jeanette's dilemma lies outside my definition of guilt, and I had told her, truthfully, over dinner, that it was very hard for me to express concern for her that I don't feel. During the entire drive from my place on the Upper West Side, she's been sobbing. The only clear, identifiable emotion coming from her is desperation and maybe longing. And though I successfully ignore her for most of the ride, I finally have to tell her, listen, I've already taken 2 Xanax this morning, so you're incapable of, upsetting me. Now, as she stumbles out of the limo onto the frozen pavement, I mumble, it's for the best, and offering consolation, don't take it so seriously. The driver, whose name I've forgotten, leads her into the brownstone and gives a last regretful look back. I sigh and wave her off. She's still wearing, from last night, a leopard-print cotton Balmacon coat with wool chalice lining over a wool-crepe shirtless dress by Bill Blass. Bigfoot was interviewed on the Patty Winter Show this morning, and to my shock I found him surprisingly articulate and charming. The glass I'm drinking Absolute vodka from is finished. I'm very suntanned compared to Jeanette. The driver comes out of the building, gives me thumbs up, carefully pulls the limousine away from the curb, and begins the trek to JFK Airport, where my flight to Aspen leaves in 90 minutes. When I get back in January, Jeanette will be out of the country. I relight a cigar, search for an ashtray. There's a church on the corner of the street. Who cares? This is, I think, the 5th child I've had aborted, the 3rd I haven't aborted myself, a useless statistic, I admit. The wind outside the limousine is brisk and cold, and the rain hits the darkened windows in rhythmic waves, mimicking Jeanette's probable weeping on the operating room, dizzy from the anesthesia, thinking about a memory from her past, a moment where the world was perfect. I resist the impulse to start cackling hysterically. At the airport, I instruct the chauffeur to stop by FAO Schwartz before picking Jeanette up, and purchase the following: a doll, a rattle, a teething ring, a white Gund polar bear, and have them sitting in the back seat for her unwrapped. Jeanette should be okay. She has her whole life in front of her. That is, if she doesn't run into me. Besides, this girl's favorite movie is Pretty in Pink, and she thinks Sting is cool. So what is happening to her is, not totally undeserved, and one shouldn't feel bad for her. This is no time for the innocent. Valentine's Day. Tuesday morning. and I'm standing by my desk in the living room on the phone with my lawyer, alternately keeping my eye on the Patty Winter Show, and the maid, as she waxes the floor, wipes blood smears off the walls, throws away gore-soaked newspapers without a word. Faintly it hits me that she too is lost in a world of shit, completely drowning in it, and this somehow sets off my remembering that the piano tuner will be stopping by this afternoon, and that I should leave a note with the doorman to let him in. Not that the Yamaha has ever been played. It's just that one of the girls fell against it, and some strings, which I used later, were pulled out, snapped or something. Into the phone I'm saying, "I need more tax breaks." Patty Winters is on the TV screen, asking a child 8 or 9, "But isn't that just another term for an orgy?" The timer buzzes on the microwave. I'm heating up a soufflé. There's no use in denying it. This has been a bad week. I've started drinking my own urine. I laugh spontaneously at nothing. Sometimes I sleep under my futon. I'm flossing my teeth constantly until my gums are aching and my mouth tastes like blood. Before dinner last night at 1500, with Reed Goodrich and Jason Rust, I was almost caught at a Federal Express in Times Square trying to send the mother of one of the girls I killed last week what might be a dried-up brown heart. And to Evelyn, I successfully Federal Expressed, through the office, a small box of flies, along with a note, typed by Jean, saying that I never, ever wanted to see her face again, and, though she really doesn't need one, to go on a fucking diet. But there are also things that the average person would think are nice that I've done to celebrate the holiday. Items I've bought Jean and had delivered to her apartment this morning. Castellini cotton napkins from Bendel's. A wicker chair from Jenny B. Good. A taffeta table throw from Barney's. A vintage chainmail vent purse. And a vintage sterling silver dresser set from Macy's. A white pine whatnot from Conrad's. An Edwardian 9-carat gold gate bracelet from Bergdorf's, and hundreds upon hundreds of pink and white roses. The office. Lyrics to Madonna songs keep intruding, bursting into my head, announcing themselves in tiring, familiar ways. And I stare into space, my eyes lazily lit up while I try to forget about the day looming before me. But then, a phrase that fills me with a nameless dread keeps interrupting the Madonna songs. Isolated farmhouse constantly returns to me over and over. Someone I've been avoiding for the last year, a nerd from Fortune, who wants to write an article about me, calls again this morning, and I end up calling the reporter back to arrange an interview. Craig McDermott is having some kind of fax frenzy and won't take any of my phone calls, preferring to communicate by fax only. The Post this morning says the remains of 3 bodies that disappeared aboard a yacht last March have been recovered, frozen in ice, hacked up and bloated in the East River. Some maniac is going around the city poisoning 1-liter bottles of Evian water. 17 dead already. Talk of zombies. The public mood, increasing randomness, vast chasms of misunderstanding. And for the sake of form, Tim Price resurfaces, or at least I'm pretty sure he does, while I'm at my desk simultaneously crossing out the days in my calendar that have already passed and reading a new bestseller about office management called Why It Works to Be a Jerk. Jean buzzes in, announcing that Tim Price wants to talk, and fearfully I say, "Send him in." Price strolls into the office wearing a wool suit by Canali Milano, a cotton shirt by Ike Bahar, a silk tie by Bill Blass, cap-toed leather lace-ups from Brooks Brothers. I'm pretending to be on the phone. He sits down across from me, on the other side of the palette-setty glass-topped desk. There's a smudge on his forehead, or at least that's what I think I see. Aside from that, he looks remarkably fit. Our conversation probably resembles something like this, but is actually briefer. "Price," I say, shaking his hand. "Where have you been?" "Oh, just making the rounds." He smiles. "But hey, I'm back." "Far out," I shrug, confused. "How was it?" "It was surprising." He shrugs too. "It was depressing." "I thought I saw you in Aspen," I murmur. "Hey, how are you, Bateman?" he asks. "I'm okay," I tell him. swallowing. Just existing. And Evelyn? He asks. How is she? Well, we broke up. I smile. That's too bad. He takes us in, remembers something. Courtney? She married Lewis. Grass green? No, Carruthers. He takes us in, too. Do you have her number? While writing it down for him, I mention, You've been gone like forever, Tim. What's the story? I ask, again noticing the smudge on his forehead, though I get the feeling that if I asked someone else if it was there, he or she would just say no. He stands up, takes the card. I've been back. You probably missed me. Lost track. Because of the move. He pauses teasingly. I'm working for Robinson. Right-hand man, you know. Almond? I ask, offering one, a futile effort on my part to mask my dismay at his smugness. He pats my back, says, You're a madman, Bateman. An animal. A total animal. I can't disagree. I laugh weakly, walking him to the door. As he leaves, I'm wondering and not wondering what happens in the world of Tim Price, which is really the world of most of us. Big ideas, guy stuff, boy meets the world, boy gets it. Bum on 5th. I'm coming back from Central Park, where near the Children's Zoo, close to the spot I murdered the McCaffrey boy, I fed portions of Ursula's brain to passing dogs. Walking down 5th Avenue around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone on the street looks sad. The air is full of decay. Bodies lie on the cold pavement, miles of it. Some are moving. Most are not. History is sinking, and only a very few seem dimly aware that things are getting bad. Airplanes fly low across the city, crossing in front of the sun. Winds shoot up 5th, then funnel down 57th Street. Flocks of pigeons rise in slow motion and burst up against the sky. The smell of burning chestnuts mixes with carbon monoxide fumes. I notice the skyline has changed only recently. I look up admiringly at Trump Tower, tall, proudly gleaming in the late afternoon sunlight. In front of it, 2 smart-ass nigger teenagers are ripping off tourists at 3-card Monte, and I have to fight the impulse to blow them away. A bum I blinded one spring sits cross-legged on a ratty blanket near the corner of 55th Street. Moving closer, I see the beggar's scarred face, and then the sign he's holding beneath it, which reads, Vietnam vet blinded in Vietnam. Please help me. We are hungry and homeless. We? Then I notice the dog, who is already eyeing me suspiciously, and as I approach its master, gets up, growling. When I'm standing over the bum, it finally barks, wagging its tail frantically. I kneel down, threateningly raise a hand at it. The dog backs off, its paws askew. I've pulled out my wallet, pretending to drop $1 into his empty coffee can, but then realize, why bother pretending? No one's watching anyway, definitely not him. I retract the $1, leaning in. He senses my presence and stops shaking the can. The sunglasses he wears don't even begin to cover the wounds I inflicted. His nose is so junked up, I can't imagine a person breathing through it. You were never in Vietnam, I whisper in his ear. After a silence, during which he pisses in his pants, the dog whimpering, he croaks, Please, don't hurt me. Why would I waste my time? I mutter, disgusted. I move away from the bum, noticing instead a little girl smoking a cigarette, begging for change outside Trump Tower. Shoo, I say. She says, Shoo! Back. On the Patty Winters show this morning, a Cheerio sat in a very small chair and was interviewed for close to an hour. Later this afternoon, a woman wearing a silver fox and mink coat has her face slashed in front of the Stanhope by an enraged fur activist. But now, still staring at the sightless bum from across the street, I buy a Dove bar, a coconut one, in which I find part of a bone. New club. Thursday night, I run into Harold Carnes at a party for a new club called World's End, that opens in a space where Petty's used to be, on the Upper East Side. I'm with Nina Goodrich and Jean in a booth, and Harold's standing at the bar drinking champagne. I'm drunk enough to finally confront him about the message I left on his machine. Excused from the booth, I make my way to the other side of the bar, realizing that I need a martini to fortify myself before discussing this with Carnes. It has been a very unstable week for me. I found myself sobbing during an episode of Alf on Monday. Nervously, I approach. Harold is wearing a wool suit by Gives and Hawke, a silk twill tie, cotton shirt, shoes by Paul Stewart. He looks heavier than I remember. "Face it," he's telling Truman Drake, "the Japanese will own most of this country by the end of the 90s. Relieved that Harold is, as usual, still dispensing valuable and new information, with the addition of a faint but unmistakable trace of, God forbid, an English accent, I find myself brazen enough to blurt out, "Shut up, Carnes, they will not." I down the martini, stolely, while Carnes, looking quite taken aback, stricken almost, turns around to face me, and his bloated head breaks out into an uncertain smile. Someone behind us is saying, "But look what happened to Gecko." Truman Drake pats Harold on the back and asks me, "Is there one suspender width that's more, well, appropriate than others?" Irritably, I push him into the crowd, and he disappears. "So, Harold," I say, "did you get my message?" Carnes seems confused at first, and while lighting a cigarette finally laughs. "Jesus, Davis. Yes, that was hilarious. That was you, was it?" "Yes, naturally." I'm blinking, muttering to myself, really, waving his cigarette smoke away from my face. "Bateman, killing Owen, and the escort girl." He keeps chuckling. "Oh, that's bloody marvelous. Really key, as they say at the Groucho Club, really key." Then, looking dismayed, he adds, "It was a rather long message, no?" I'm smiling idiotically, and then I say, "But what exactly do you mean, Harold?" Secretly thinking to myself that this fat bastard couldn't possibly have gotten into the fucking Groucho Club, and even if he had, to admit it in such a fashion obliterates the fact that his entrance was accepted. "Why, the message you left." Carnes is already looking around the club, waving to various people and bimbos. "By the way, Davis, how is Cynthia?" He accepts a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "You're still seeing her, right?" "But wait, Harold. What do you mean?" I repeat emphatically. He's already bored, neither concerned nor listening, and excusing himself, says, "Nothing. Good to see you. Oh, my, is that Edward Towers?" I crane my neck to look, then turn back to Harold. "No," I say. "Carnes." "Wait. Davis," he sighs, as if patiently trying to explain something to a child. "I am not one to badmouth anyone. Your joke was amusing, but come on, man, you had one fatal flaw. Bateman's such a bloody ass-kisser, such a brown-nosing goody-good, that I couldn't fully appreciate it. Otherwise, it was amusing. Now, let's have lunch, or we'll have dinner at 150 Worcester or something with McDermott and Preston. A real raver." He tries to move on. "Raver? Raver? Did you say raver, Carnes?" I'm wide-eyed, feeling wired even though I haven't done any drugs. "What are you talking about? Bateman is what?" "Oh, good God, man. Why else would Evelyn Richards dump him? You know, really. He could barely pick up an escort girl, let alone—" "What was it you said he did to her?" Harold is still looking distractedly around the club, and he waves to another couple, raising his champagne glass. "Oh, yes. Chop her up?" He starts laughing again, though this time it sounds polite. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I must really—" "Wait, stop!" I shout, looking up into Carnes' face, making sure he's listening. "You don't seem to understand. You're not really comprehending any of this. I killed him. I did it, Carnes. I chopped Owen's fucking head off. I tortured dozens of girls. That whole message I left on your machine was true." I'm drained, not appearing calm, wondering why this doesn't feel like a blessing to me. "Excuse me," he says, trying to ignore my outburst. "I really must be going." "No!" I shout. "Now, Carnes, listen to me. Listen very, very carefully. I killed Paul Owen, and I liked it. I can't make myself any clearer. My stress causes me to choke on the words. But that's simply not possible, he says, brushing me off, and I'm not finding this amusing anymore. It never was supposed to be, I bellow, and then, why isn't it possible? It's just not, he says, eyeing me worriedly. Why not? I shout again over the music, though there's really no need to, adding, you stupid bastard! He stares at me as if we both are underwater and shouts back very clearly over the din of the club, because I had dinner with Paul Owen twice in London just 10 days ago. After we stare at each other for what seems like a minute, I finally have the nerve to say something back to him, but my voice lacks any authority, and I'm not sure if I believe myself when I tell him simply, no, you didn't. But it comes out a question, not a statement. Now, Donaldson, Carnes says, removing my hand from his arm, if you'll excuse me. Oh, you're excused. I sneer. Then I make my way back to our booth, where John Edmonton and Peter Beavers are now sitting, and I numb myself with a halcyon before taking Jean home, back to my place. Jean is wearing something by Oscar de la Renta. Nina Goodrich was wearing a sequin dress by Matsuda, and refused to give me her number, even though Jean was in the women's room downstairs. Taxi driver. Another broken scene in what passes for my life occurs on Wednesday, seemingly pointing to someone's fault, though whose I can't be sure. Stuck in gridlock in a cab, heading downtown toward Wall Street after a power breakfast at the Regency with Peter Russell, who used to be my dealer before he got a real job, and Eddie Lambert. Russell was wearing a 2-button wool sport coat by Reda Ellie, a cotton shirt by Hackert, a silk tie by Richel, pleated wool trousers by Crizia Uomo, and leather Colhan shoes. The Patty Winter show this morning was about girls in the 4th grade who trade sex for crack, and I almost canceled with Lambert and Russell to catch it. Russell ordered for me while I was in the lobby on the phone. It was, unfortunately, a high-fat, high-sodium breakfast, and before I could comprehend what was happening, plates of herbed waffles with ham and Madeira cream sauce, grilled sausages, and sour cream coffee cake were set at our table, and I had to ask the waiter for a pot of decaf herbal tea, a plate of sliced mango with blueberries, and a bottle of Evian. In the early morning light that poured through the windows at the Regency, I watched as our waiter shaved black truffles gracefully over Lambert's steaming eggs. Overcome, I broke down and demanded to have the black truffles shaved over my mango slices. Nothing much happened during the breakfast. I had to make another phone call, and when I returned to our table, I noticed that a mango slice was missing, but I didn't accuse anyone. I had other things on my mind. How to help America schools, the trust gap, desk sets, a new era of possibilities, and what's in it for me, getting tickets to see Sting in the Threepenny Opera, which just opened on Broadway, how to take more and remember less. In the cab, I'm wearing a double-breasted cashmere and wool overcoat by Studio 000.1 from Ferret, a wool suit with pleated trousers by de Rigueur from Schoenemann, a silk tie by Givenchy Gentleman, socks by Interwoven, shoes by Armani, reading the Wall Street Journal with my Ray-Ban sunglasses on and listening to a Walkman with a Bix Beiderbecke tape playing in it. I put down the journal, pick up the Post, just to check page 6. At the light on 7th and 34th, in the cab next to this one, sits, I think, Kevin Gladwin, wearing a suit by Ralph Lauren. I lower my sunglasses. Kevin looks up from the new issue of Money magazine and spots me looking over at him in a curious way before his cab moves forward in the traffic. The cab I'm in suddenly breaks free of the gridlock and turns right on 27th, taking the West Side Highway down Wall Street. I put the paper down, concentrate on the music and the weather, how unseasonably cool it is, and I'm just beginning to notice the way the cab driver looks at me in the rearview mirror. A suspicious, hungry expression keeps changing the features on his face. A mass of clogged pores, ingrown hairs. I sigh, expecting this, ignoring him. Open the hood of a car, and it will tell you something about the people who designed it, is just one of the many phrases I'm tortured by. But the driver knocks on the plexiglass divider, motions to me. While taking the Walkman off, I notice he's locked all the doors. I see the locks lower in a flash, hear the hollow clicking noise, the moment I turn the volume off. The cab is speeding faster than it should down the highway in the far right lane. "Yes?" I ask irritably. "What?" "Hey, don't I know you?" he asks in a thick, barely penetrable accent that could easily be New Jersey or Mediterranean. "No." I start putting the Walkman back on. "You look familiar," he says. "What's your name?" "No, I don't." "You don't either," I say. Then an afterthought. "Chris Hagen." "Come on." He's smiling like there's something wrong. "I know who you are." "I'm in a movie. I'm an actor," I tell him. "A model." "Nah, that's not it," he says grimly. "Well," I lean over, checking his name. "Abdullah, do you have a membership at MK? He doesn't answer. I reopen the Post to a photo of the mayor dressed as a pineapple, then close it again and rewind the tape in my Walkman. I start counting to myself. 1, 2, 3, 4. My eyes focus in on the meter. Why didn't I carry a gun with me this morning? Because I didn't think I had to. The only weapon on me is a used knife from last night. "No," he says again. "I've seen your face somewhere." Finally, exasperated, I ask, trying to appear casual. "You have? Really? Interesting. Just watch the road, Abdullah." There's a long, scary pause while he stares at me in the rearview mirror, and the grim smile fades. His face is blank. He says, "I know. Man, I know who you are." And he's nodding, his mouth drawn tight. The radio that was tuned into the news is shut off. Buildings pass by in a gray-red blur. The cab passes other cabs. The sky changes color from blue to purple, to black, back to blue. At another light, a red one he races straight through, we pass, on the other side of the West Side Highway, a new D'Agostino's on the corner where Mars used to be, and it moves me to tears, almost, because it's something that's identifiable, and I get as nostalgic for the market, even though it's not one I will ever shop at, as I have about anything, and I almost interrupt the driver, tell him to pull over, have him let me out, let him keep the change from a 10, no, 20, but I can't move because he's driving too fast, and something intervenes, something unthinkable and ludicrous. And I hear him say it, maybe. "You're the guy who killed Sully." His face is locked into a determined grimace. As with everything else, the following happens very quickly, though it feels like an endurance test. I swallow, lower my sunglasses, and tell him to slow down before asking, "Who, may I ask, is Solly?" "Man, your face is on a wanted poster downtown," he says, unflinching. "I think I would like to stop here," I managed to croak out. "You're the guy, right?" He's looking at me like I'm some kind of viper. Another cab, its light on, empty, cruises past ours, going at least 80. I'm not saying anything, just shaking my head. "I am going to take—" I swallow, trembling, open my leather datebook, pull out a Mont Blanc pen from my Bottega Veneta briefcase. "Your license number down." "You killed Solly," he says, defiantly recognizing me from somewhere, cutting another denial on my part by growling, "You son of a bitch." Near the docks downtown, he swerves off the highway and races the cab to the end of a deserted parking area. And it hits me somewhere, now, this moment, when he drives into and then over a dilapidated rust-covered aluminum fence, heading toward the water, that all I have to do is put the Walkman on, blot out the sound of the cab driver, but my hands are twisted into paralyzed fists that I can't unclench, held captive in the cab as it hurtles toward a destination only the cab driver, who is obviously deranged, knows. The windows are rolled down partially, and I can feel the cool morning air drawing the mousse on my scalp. I feel naked, suddenly tiny. My mouth tastes metallic, then it gets worse. My vision, a winter road. But I'm left with one comforting thought. I am rich. Millions are not. You've, incorrectly identified me, I'm saying. He stops the cab and turns around toward the back seat. He's holding a gun, the make of which I don't recognize. I'm staring at him, my quizzical expression changing into something else. Watch. Rolex, he says simply. I listen, silent, squirming in my seat. He repeats. The watch. Is this some kind of prank? I ask. Get out, he spits. Get the fuck out of the car. I stare past the driver's head, out the windshield, at gulls flying low over the dark, wavy water, and opening the door, I step out of the cab, cautiously. No sudden moves. It's a cold day. My breath steams. Wind picks it up, swirls it around. The watch, you scumbag, he says, leaning out the window, the gun aimed at my head. Listen, I don't know what you think you're doing, or what you're exactly trying to accomplish, or what it is you think you're going to be able to do. I've never been fingerprinted. I have alibis. Shut up! Abdullah growls, cutting me off. Just shut your fucking mouth! I am innocent, I shout with utter conviction. The watch! He cocks the gun. I unhook the Rolex and, sliding it off my wrist, hand it to him. Wallet! He motions with his gun. Just the cash. Helplessly, I take out my new gazelle skin wallet, and quickly, my fingers freezing, numb, hand him the cash, which amounts to only $300, since I didn't have time to stop at an automated teller before the power breakfast. Sally, I'm guessing, was the cab driver I killed during the chase scene last fall, even though the guy was Armenian. I suppose I could have killed another one, and I'm just not recalling this particular incident. What are you going to do? I ask. Isn't there a reward of some kind? No, no reward, he mutters, shuffling the bills with one hand, the gun still pointed at me in the other. How do you know I'm not going to call you in and get your license revoked? I ask, handing over a knife I just found in my pocket that looks as if it was dipped into a bowl of blood and hair. Because you're guilty, he says, and then, get that away from me, waving the gun at the stained knife. Like you know, I mutter angrily. The sunglasses! He points again with a gun. How do you know I'm guilty? I can't believe I'm asking this patiently. Look at what you're doing, asshole, he says. The sunglasses! These are expensive, I protest, then sigh, realizing the mistake. I mean, cheap. They're very cheap. Just, isn't the money enough? The sunglasses! Give them now, he grunts. I take the wayfarers off and hand them to him. Maybe I really did kill a Sally, though I'm positive that any cab drivers I've killed lately were not American. I probably did. There probably is a wanted poster of me at, where? The taxi? The place where all the taxis congregate? What's it called? The driver tries the sunglasses on, looks at himself in the rearview mirror, and then takes them off. He folds the glasses and puts them in his jacket pocket. You're a dead man, I smile grimly at him. And you're a yuppie scumbag, he says. You're a dead man, Abdullah, I repeat. No joke. Count on it. Yeah, and you're a yuppie scumbag. Which is worse? He starts the cab up and pulls away from me. While walking back to the highway, I stop, choke back a sob. My throat tightens. I just want to... Facing the skyline, through all the baby talk, I murmur, keep the game going. As I stand, frozen in position, an old woman emerges behind a threepenny opera poster at a deserted bus stop, and she's homeless and begging, hobbling over, her face covered with sores that look like bugs, holding out a shaking red hand. "Oh, will you please go away?" I sigh. She tells me to get a haircut. At Harry's. On a Friday evening, a group of us have left the office early, finding ourselves at Harry's. Group consists of Tim Price, Craig McDermott, myself, Preston Goodrich, who is currently dating a total hardbody named, I think, Plum, no last name, just Plum, an actress model, which I have a feeling we all think is pretty hip. We're having a debate over where to make reservations for dinner. Flamingo East, Oyster Bar, 220, Counter Life, Michael's, Spago East, the Cirque, Robert Farrell is here too, the Lotus Quotrek, a portable stock quotation device in front of him on the table, and he's pushing buttons while the latest commodities flash by. What are people wearing? McDermott has on a cashmere sport coat, wool trousers, a silk tie, Hermes. Farrell is wearing a cashmere vest, leather shoes, wool cavalry twill trousers, Garrick Anderson. I'm wearing a wool suit by Armani, shoes by Allen Edmonds, pocket square by Brooks Brothers. Someone else has on a suit tailored by Anderson and Shepard. Someone who looks like Todd Lauder, and may in fact be, gives thumbs up across the room, etc., etc. Questions are routinely thrown my way. Among them, are the rules for wearing a pocket square the same as for a white dinner jacket? Is there any difference at all between boat shoes and topsiders? My futon is already flattened out, and it's uncomfortable to sleep on. What can I do? How does one judge the quality of compact discs before buying them? What tie knot is less bulky than a Windsor? How can one maintain a sweater's elasticity? Any tips on buying a shearling coat? I am, of course, thinking about other things, asking myself my own questions. Am I a fitness junkie? Man versus conformity. Can I get a date with Cindy Crawford? Does being a Libra signify anything? And if so, can you prove it? Today, I was obsessed with the idea of faxing Sarah's blood I drained from her vagina over to her office in the mergers division at Chase Manhattan. And I didn't work out this morning because I'd made a necklace from some of the bones of a girl's vertebra and wanted to stay home and wear it around my neck while I masturbated in the white marble tub in my bathroom, grunting and moaning like some kind of animal. Then I watched a movie about 5 lesbians and 10 vibrators. Favorite group, Talking Heads. Drink, J&B, or Absolute on the Rocks. TV show, Late Night with David Letterman. Soda, Diet Pepsi. Water, Evian. Sport, baseball. The conversation follows on its own rolling accord. No real structure or topic or internal logic or feeling, except, of course, for its own hidden conspiratorial one. Just words, and like in a movie, but one that has been transcribed improperly. Most of it overlaps. I'm having a sort of hard time paying attention because my automated teller has started speaking to me, sometimes actually leaving weird messages on the screen in green lettering like, "Cause a terrible scene at Sotheby's," or "Kill the President," or "Feed me a stray cat." And I was freaked out by the park bench that followed me for 6 blocks last Monday evening, and it spoke to me, too. Disintegration. I'm taking it in stride, yet the only question I can muster up at first and add to the conversation is a worried, "I'm not going anywhere if we don't have a reservation someplace, so do we have a reservation someplace or not?" I notice that we're all drinking dry beers. Am I the only one who notices this? I'm also wearing mock tortoiseshell glasses that are non-prescription. On the TV screen in Harry's is the Patty Winter Show, which is now on in the afternoon and is up against Geraldo Rivera, Phil Donahue, and Oprah Winfrey. Today's topic is, does economic success equal happiness? The answer in Harry's this afternoon is a roar of resounding, definitely, followed by much hooting, the guys all cheering together in a friendly way. On the screen now are scenes from President Bush's inauguration early this year, then a speech from former President Reagan while Patty delivers a hard-to-hear commentary. Soon, a tiresome debate forms over whether he's lying or not, even though we can't hear the words. The first and really only one to complain is Price, who, though I think he's bothered by something else, uses this opportunity to vent his frustration, looks inappropriately stunned, asks, "Can he lie like that? How can he pull that shit?" "Oh, Christ," I moan. "What shit?" "Now, where do we have reservations at? I mean, I'm not really hungry, but I would like to have reservations somewhere. How about 220? An afterthought. "McDermott, how did that rate in the News Agats?" "No way," Farrell complains before Craig can answer. "The Coke I scored there last time was cut with so much laxative, I actually had to take a shit in MK. Yeah, life sucks and then you die." "Low point of the night," Farrell mutters. "Weren't you with Kyria the last time you were there?" Goodrich asks. "Wasn't that the low point?" "She caught me on call waiting. What could I do?" Farrell shrugs. "I apologize." "Caught him on call waiting." McDermott nudges me, dubious. "Shut up, McDermott," Farrell says, snapping Craig's suspenders. "Date a beggar." "You forgot something, Farrell," Preston mentions. "McDermott is a beggar." "How's Courtney?" Farrell asks Craig, leering. "Just say no," someone laughs. Price looks away from the television screen, then at Craig, and he tries to hide his displeasure by asking me, waving at the TV, "I don't believe it. He looks so normal. He seems so out of it, so undangerous." Bimbo, someone says. Bypass. "He is totally harmless, you geek." "Was totally harmless. Just like you are totally harmless. But he did do all that shit, and you have failed to get us into 150, so, what can I say?" McDermott shrugs. "I just don't get how anyone, can appear that way, yet be involved in such total shit," Price says, ignoring Craig, averting his eyes from Farrell. He takes out a cigar and studies it sadly. To me, it still looks like there's a smudge on Price's forehead. "Because Nancy was right behind him?" Farrell guesses, looking up from the Quotrek. "Because Nancy did it? How can you be so fucking, cool about it?" Price, to whom something really eerie has obviously happened, sounds genuinely perplexed. Rumor has it that he was in rehab. "Some guys are just born cool, I guess." Farrell smiles, shrugging. I'm laughing at this answer, since Farrell is so obviously uncool. And Price shoots me a reprimanding look, says, "And Bateman, what are you so fucking zany about?" I shrug, too. I'm just a happy camper. And I add, remembering, quoting my brother, "Rocking and rolling. Be all that you can be," someone adds. Oh, brother. Price won't let it die. "Look," he starts, trying for a rational appraisal of the situation. "He presents himself as a harmless old codger, but inside—" He stops. My interest picks up, flickers briefly. "But inside—" Price can't finish the sentence, can't add the last two words he needs. "Doesn't matter." I'm both disappointed and relieved for him. "Inside?" "Yes, inside?" Craig asks, bored. "Believe it or not, we're actually listening to you. Go on." "Bateman," Price says, relenting slightly. "Come on. What do you think?" I look up, smile, don't say anything. From somewhere, the TV, the national anthem plays. Why? I don't know. Before a commercial, maybe. Tomorrow on the Patty Winter Show, doormen from Nell's. Where are they now? I sigh, shrug, whatever. "That's a pretty good answer," Price says, then adds, "You're a real nut." That is the most valuable piece of information I've heard since... I look at my new gold Rolex that insurance paid for. McDermott suggested we all drink dry beers. Christ, I want a scotch. McDermott looks up with an exaggerated grin and purrs. "Bud. Long neck? Beautiful. Very civilized." Goodrich nods. Super stylish English guy, Nigel Morrison, stops by our table, and he's wearing a flower in the lapel of his Paul Smith jacket. but he can't stay long since he has to meet other British friends, Ian and Lucy, at Delmonico's. Seconds after he walks away, I hear someone sneer, "Nigel, a pate animal." Someone else, "Did you know that Caveman got more fiber than we do?" Who's handling the Fisher account? Screw that. What about the Shepherd thing, the Shepherd account? Is that David Monroe? What a burnout. Oh, brother, for Christ's sakes, lean and mean. What's in it for me? The Shepherd play or the Shepherd account? Rich people with cheap stereos. No, girls who can hold their liquor. Total lightweight. Need a light? Nice matches. What's in it for me? Yep. I think it's me who says, I have to return some videotapes. Someone has already taken out a Minolta cellular phone and called for a car, and then, when I'm not really listening, watching instead someone who looks remarkably like Marcus Halberstam paying a check, someone asks, simply, not in relation to anything, "Why?" And though I'm very proud that I have cold blood, and that I can keep my nerve and do what I'm supposed to do, I catch something, then realize it. Why? And automatically answering out of the blue, for no reason, just opening my mouth, words coming out, summarizing for the idiots. Well, though I know I should have done that instead of not doing it, I'm 27 for Christ's sakes, and this is how life presents itself in a bar or in a club in New York, maybe anywhere at the end of the century, and how people, me, behave. And this is what being Patrick means to me, I guess. So, well, yep. And this is followed by a sigh, then a slight shrug, and another sigh. And above one of the doors, covered by red velvet drapes and Harry's, is a sign, and on the sign, in letters that match the drape's color, are the words, "This is not an exit." That is the end of American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis.